The Steam Next Fest has been and gone whilst I was recovering from Signalis, but that didn't stop me from checking out several of the future darlings on display. I first became aware of Signalis from these demo fests, so frankly, I consider doing these my civic duty. Who knows what else will ruin my life? As always, demos might not originate from this festival specifically, and sadly, there's no guarantee these will still be playable by the time this goes out. Doubly so since this video is later than normal. But let's get started. Children of the Sun is a tactical puzzle shooter made by Renee Rother and published by Devolver Digital. You play as a sniper who clearly has a small grudge with a cult of evil weirdos, and so we're going to kill them with our magic sniping powers. You comb around an area, moving left or right to scope out your targets. When you feel like you're ready, it's time to point and shoot. But when your bullet hits, you can re-aim and re-fire the same magic bullet into anyone else around that you can see. Every area has to be cleared in a single shot, so you're going to have to zig and zag between some heads to move forward. It's cool the game gives you a map of how you travelled through a level once completed. Just a real satisfying touch of style there. And boy, does this game have style. It's aggressively in your face with some dark and weird vibes that put you in the mindset of the protagonist, someone who was completely broken mentally and decided all of these robed weirdos would do better with their brains outside of their skull. There's no dialogue in cutscenes, just fast cuts and blaring noise like your head is screaming and calling for release, and relief only delivered through the mixture of warm blood and wet mud. It's not nonsensical, it's easy to work out what's going on, giving context enough to believe in our cursed crusade. I love it. It starts off pretty simple, but the demo knows when to start to switch things up. Many obstacles in an area or shielded enemies might throw a wrench in your plans, but you can adjust the trajectory of your shot slightly in mid-air, or even completely re-aim it if you hit enough glowing weak points on your marks. Still, even then, the game will attempt to throw things at you to keep things fresh. I eagerly await the full version of Children of the Sun, though it doesn't have a release date yet. But what's here makes it seem like the game is lining up for a real bullseye. Esoteric Ebb is an isometric RPG by Christopher Beauregard and Sudden Snail. We're going to bring up Disco Elysium a lot talking about this game, as Disco's been out long enough that there is a healthy crop of games that one could describe as Disco likes. And Ebb is one such game. You play as a pathetic cleric who wakes up after being resurrected from death, finding yourself wrapped up in a world of political intrigue and humorous takes on genre trappings, this time fantasy rather than police and crime fiction. And we can talk to anyone, but spend more time chatting with our own skills than we do with others. Yeah, very familiar ground. Ebb does manage to do well enough to distinguish itself though, in a few respects. For one, it uses Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as its foundation, so if you're familiar with it one way or the other, you're going to at least have some understanding of how things work. Like your ability scores, spell slots, resting, and even combat. Yes, unlike Disco, this has combat worked into its dialogue system, which functions like 5e combat, but with the freedom of a particularly cool and easygoing dungeon master who says, yes, you can try to persuade the zombie. But the main pillar of this game is its writing. Ebb may take a lot from Disco in terms of mechanics and presentation, but the solid prose feels all its own. Its characters feel endearing and thought out, offering intrigue and humour at the right moments. It's more immediately light-hearted than Disco, but doesn't do so at the risk of cheapening its setting. Your interactions with the world and everyone in it are simply delightful, and offer enough range to cover whatever kind of cleric you want to be. Do you want to be the kind of wannabe hero that strives to do their best, or a gremlin who takes wild actions that could screw up the whole party if they fail, but if you succeed, you'll be... Uh-oh. The world itself is also interesting, taking place in one of its own crafting rather than the Forgotten Realms. There's been an explosion at a tea shop right around the point where the first election ever is meant to be taking place in the region, and we're introduced gradually to all the movers and shakers who want to know more, but only if you want to. You're given freedom to do whatever you want basically from the moment you wake up, so you can follow any thread you fancy. It is enough of a creative flourish to recommend the game in its own right, but has other things I appreciated too. You can examine, or behold, NPCs and learn more about them by passing a roll based on perception, helping you get your footing before you engage them. And I like that it's a roll with layers of success too. Spells too can be cast during conversation to mix things up dynamically, but be sure you don't get caught doing something you shouldn't be. The game doesn't have a release date yet, and while it could do with some more polish in a few areas, like making the UI clearer, what's here is incredibly promising. Here's hoping Esoteric Ebb rolls well when it finally comes out, unlike me coming up with a way to end this chapter.
Ready, go!
Mullet Mad Jack is a first-person shooter roguelike by Hammer95 and Epopea Games. In the game, you have 10 seconds to live, but can refill the time by killing people. It's sort of like the New York Minute mode from Max Payne if the entire game had been designed around it. The reason you have 10 seconds to live is because your quest to free the influencer princess is being live streamed, and if the audience gets bored, you die. Makes perfect sense to me, that's just being an online content creator. So you never stop moving forward and killing in areas that are incredibly straightforward, but frankly need to be, as the killing does not stop, can not stop, because if it does, you're dead. Enemy attacks don't take off health, but time you have to live, so you have to be accurate as well as efficient, which matches the game's loud style of overstimulating imagery and supercharged energy, and pairing it with the aesthetics of an old anime OVA is just the spark needed to light this dynamite. The basic flow works wonderfully and feels fantastic. Gun for shooting, boot for kicking. Your brick and mortar for building a murder house. And we furnish it with a roguelike structure. Levels are random and you need to progress through 10 floors of this building before you'll get a checkpoint. But you'll get an upgrade at the end of every floor. A power-up of some kind, or maybe a different weapon. It keeps things spicy, changing up how you play, and ensures the game's relentless pace doesn't wear into a monotonous rut. Add on to that new enemy types and bosses too, and man, we have ourselves one hell of a game. Mullet Mad Jack is sick, and manages to use all of its tricks to feel fresh. It has its influences, like I'm certain that the developer has played a Suda 5.1 game before, probably likes Police Noughts too, but takes all of them and mixes them up until we get a standout, knockout, balls-out winner. It doesn't have a set release date yet, but this Jack is mad about Mad Jack. Not mullets, though. Thanks. Pacific Drive is a first-person car-focused survival game by Ironwood Studios and published by Kepler Interactive. The premise is simple. An exclusion zone was set up in the sticks of the grand old US of A, probably because of paranormal reasons. And what do you know? Whilst driving your trusty station wagon by the walls of the zone, paranormal things begin to happen. Now, we're trapped in the zone, complete with all of its weird mysteries. Luckily for you, you find another station wagon, different to your destroyed station wagon, and so begins an adventure to survive out here. The whole game revolves around your car, and the game is keen to emphasize this. You have to turn the keys to start it, put it in park or drive when you want to stop or start driving, separate buttons for wipers and headlights. This is not just a means from A to B, but your whole world. You won't survive out there without it, so you have to take care of it. Fix it up when it's broken, build new parts for it, which you can also do out the back of your vehicle. Remember to fuel it and charge the battery when you're back at the garage, and then plan your route and off you go. Once out in the world, it's time to explore what's left around here and take what you need for yourself, scavenging and scrapping whatever parts you need. It feels organic, in a way very much like Subnautica was. exploring around, crafting new things to help you explore around and craft new things, etc, etc. However, the game uses zones and a map rather than one big world, asking you to plot out your runs in advance before you return to the garage. The demo only lets you do one of these runs, but I like what I saw. There's danger out there too. Radiation and other environmental hazards which could sap away your health or your vehicle, and also other things. Don't like that. Okay, really don't like that. I'm not entirely clear on the story of the game, beyond we're in a bad place and want to survive. There are other characters that talk to you over a radio, but there was a lot of just dialogue dumped on me at once while I was trying to collect materials, sometimes new conversations interrupting other ones, but the world still remains compelling. I appreciate that the dialogue knows that a station wagon driving around essentially the stalker zone is a bit of a silly premise, so the characters are pretty lighthearted.
You see that glowing pillar into the sky? Drive into it. Yes, it looks like hot death, but it's so much better than getting strangled by the instability.
Ultimately, I want to know more. I want to see what else Pacific Drive has to show me when it drives up on the 22nd of February this year. Huh. Well, if they're dead, I can just drive through them, right? God damn it! Balatro is a poker roguelike deck builder made by Local Thunk and published by PlayStack. Poker roguelike deck builder confused me at first. It feels like those words shouldn't go together. Then I saw there was some buzz from other players about this game, and then, oh dear, I've lost my whole day playing this. Anyway. Ooh, a two-pair. Balatro is very, very simple. If you know how to make a hand in poker, then you'll slide right in, but the game will also help you if you don't. You draw a set amount of cards and can then play 5 of them in order to form hands. 2 pairs, straights, flushes, all that jazz. Cards left will go towards the next play, and you'll draw cards to replace what was already played. You can also perform a certain amount of discards per match in order to have a chance at making the hands you want. However, there's no strict gambling here. Instead, each card has a certain value, and you'll earn chips based on what you use to form a hand, which also has a set value. Your objective is to get enough cards to go over a certain threshold, here called blinds. A small blind, a big blind, and a boss blind, which has some stipulations to it. This is an incredibly simple structure that is then upended by the game's roguelike nature. You get a certain amount of cash for beating blinds, with more cash for doing so in fewer hands, and you spend that on different cards to help you. Jokers are your bread and butter, passive buffs that can let you earn more chips or give a multiplier based on payouts, but sometimes ask for certain cards to be played to use them efficiently. You can have up to 5 at a time, and pulling off combos with them is not only possible, but necessary, as the blinds get bigger and bigger. There are consumables too, like tarot cards that give you buffs of a dizzying variety, like upgrading cards or changing cards completely, planet cards which will then level up a poker hand so you can earn more with certain hands compared to others. Suddenly, lower tier hands in this is actually preferable. Then there's also just stuffing more actual playing cards into your deck, meaning it's possible to get 5 of a kind. Ooh, why not? It's the deliberate roguelike trap to have multiple parameters for you to focus your mind on that each can drastically change a run, and together they manage to grip you and make you sweat as you hope to get that one thing that'll make this combination complete. Wrapping it up in a trippy and hypnotic presentation too keeps you under its spell. Its CRT effects and visuals wrap you in a big nostalgic blanket, evoking playing online poker in chat rooms back in the day. I never did that, but the effect still manages to hit. I guess I did play Hearts back on my Windows 98 PC when I was a kid. Everything you do as well pops, makes a sound, and tickles your brain for a concentrated dopamine hit. Building a combo is an incredible feeling, making you feel truly unstoppable when you manage to get your cards exactly as you've been hoping for. It makes a one more round kind of game. I lost 3 hours to it the first time around and still went back for more. It's simple. There's no story or narrative, I don't think, and it doesn't need one. Some Inscription-style story would just get in the way of a perfect and addictive gameplay loop, wrapped in so much juiciness that it feels like a drug. Balatro is excellent. It's out February 20th, and this is a winning hand. Don't think that doing well means you'll be good at actual gambling, though. Now, it's time to go fast.
3, 2, 1, go!
Tribes 3 Rivals is a competitive first-person shooter by Prophecy Games, and it is about speed. Hold down the shift key to activate jet skiing, allowing you to preserve any momentum you can from slopes and gravity, before rocketing upwards with a jetpack at high velocity. This was famously a glitch in the original Star Siege Tribes, before becoming a feature in every game in the series since. Frankly, whoever thought it was a good idea to keep it should have been given a medal. I ought to point out that I've been playing the playtests for Tribes 3 before the demo fest began, so some of the footage will be from that. I've also only played Tribes Ascend from 2012 before this, but I put a good amount of time into it and really enjoyed myself with that game before Hi-Res Studios abandoned it for Smite. I'm shocked we actually have a new Tribes game after all that. Just after Smite 2 was announced, weirdly enough. The movement in Tribes feels excellent and totally unique, but undoubtedly takes skill to pull off effectively. Gaining momentum is as simple as holding shift as you fall, but then you have to keep it. Misstep and you'll lose all your speed and end up as food for the other players. Even how you land has to be considered, as a gentle slope will let you preserve your momentum like a skateboarder coming down a ramp, but harder landings will make you take a hit. Not to your health, to your speed, I mean. That's much more important. So there is a learning curve to actually playing the game, but there are at least offline modes where you can practice moving, and shooting too. Projectile weapons being the main focus means that aiming is going to require a gear shift. If two players are travelling at over 100 miles an hour, one hitting the other one dead on is like solving a mathematics problem before you hit fire. But if you can nail it, oh boy is it an adrenaline hit. Most weapons are explosive, so you can easily get kills by just predicting where someone will land and shooting in the general area. It's certainly a good way to start before ratcheting things up. Game modes want to emphasize mobility, however, more than two people shooting one another, with objective-based modes like Capture the Flag and another game mode focused around bombing an enemy base, feeling akin to a no-rules rugby match. There's different loadouts too that emphasize either attacking or defending, and adjusting how much armor you have. You might survive a hit or two with more armor, but you'll be heavier, and you'll go slower. Do you really want to move slow in the fast game? And it's fun! God, it's so much fun! I don't know what else to say. Tribes 3 is basically what I wanted again. Tribes, back from the dead, and still feeling like the game that was lost. It's going into early access soon, so keep a lookout for this and any other game from the Demo Fest. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching this video. We should be getting back to normal soon. Some awaited games are coming up, and some videos that might not even be about games. Ooh, isn't that exciting? And a heartfelt thank you to my patrons. Thank you for helping me in making any of this possible. Patrons get access to the occasional exclusive video, like the Signalis Inventory System Rant Deleted Scene, and can also answer questions in Q&A segments at the end of videos, which we'll get into right now. Would you consider reviewing Infra at some point? Infra I bought ages ago and never played, just lying in the pile of games I keep meaning to play at some point, but then a new Yakuza Like a Dragon game comes out and I get sucked away to them instead. Maybe at some point, if I feel I have enough to say on it. Now that Steam's added a boomer shooter tag, there's been some debate about what qualifies. Do you have a personal or operational definition? It's tricky. Personally, I think it's possible for a game to transform itself enough to no longer qualify. Ultra Kill I don't think of as a boomer shooter, for example, as everything serves the spectacle fighter qualities of it. Very linear structure, infinite ammo too. Don't take that as I don't like it, because I love that game intensely. So probably a boomer shooter needs wide combat options through many weapons, ammo management guiding the player, in whatever way that might be, and exploration with secret hunting. But I just came up with these for this question, so don't take it as gospel. There's probably one I like that breaks each of these ideas. Do you have a favourite Boris story? Boris has lived a raucous life. 90% of the time I would hear a cat fight outside my window, I would see Boris caused it and was now actively chasing the other cat down the street. He was a menace, but he's too old for any of that now. But his best victory was beating diabetes. He had a hypo one day, and sure enough we took him to the vet and started having to give him insulin every day for about a year. But then one day his blood sugar just went suddenly in the opposite direction, and he didn't need insulin anymore. Diabetic remission can happen in cats, but still, it's been several years since and he's still fine. Just decided not to be diabetic anymore. Okay, that's all for now. I'll see you next time.